Hello, everyone. This is Alexander Horat, your host of the Morgan Millennial Minute Report. The show is brought to you by David Morgan of themorganreport.com. And today we're having a very special guest on the show. Her name is Holly Seeliger, and she has a YouTube channel called Zoan Politikon. We're really happy to have her on the show.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Is there any tips that you could give to millennials, how they can achieve financial freedom and how they can thrive in this economy?
Well, I think it's important to look at how millennials, how we've sort of lived our lives financially. I know personally, I went into massive student loan debt going to college. So a lot of us are still paying that debt off. We will be paying that off for many years. The Biden administration basically put forward the Public Service Student Loan Forgiveness Act, but really all he did with this major press release that they just put out regarding this is that they're actually holding up on their promise to fulfill that for people. So many student loan borrowers, such as myself, served in, work for the public. So whether if you worked for a local government, or if you're a teacher or a doctor or a nurse, or a government worker, this act was supposed to allow people to have their student loans forgiven. You'd still be paying taxes on that afterwards, so you'll find out about that. But after 10 years of working a job and making qualifying payments towards this. However, people found out quickly that the student loan forgiveness program was very slow to forgive, or if you consolidated your federal loans, you had to restart the 10-year clock again, or if they were consolidated, they no longer qualified. So there was a lot of confusion with the federal student loan forgiveness site and with the whole program. So apparently Biden, all he really did was try to streamline some of that. So they talked about billions of dollars being forgiven from the student loan program through this consolidation with this act. However, we're up to $1.7 trillion in student loan debt at this point, and most of that is held by millennials. So I would probably suggest to millennials at this point, don't get into any further student loan debt, or if you're a younger person, if you're younger than a millennial, definitely make sure you know what you're doing and the degree program that you want and the job outlook and the earning income potential before getting into any sort of private loans if for say if your parents aren't going to pay for it for you, etc. So definitely be very wary of getting into student loan debt at this point, because as millennials, we have been told for many years now that the student loan debt bubble was going to be forgiven, that there is going to be some sort of jubilee. And I don't believe that that's going to happen. I think it's going to continue to increase. So be very wary of that. There is income-based repayments, etc. There's rumors that after 25 years or so, the debt is forgiven, but then you're paying income tax on that. So you need to do your research on that, as well as what happens after your student loans are forgiven.
Yeah, I think you have a good point, because I believe you can't even declare bankruptcy on student loan debt, which I think is pretty odd, because you can declare bankruptcy on other types of debt. So it's definitely a big problem here in the United States. So what are some tips that you can give to millennials who do have college debt, how they can pay it off and do that well?
Well, I just wanted to comment quickly. I believe it was George W. Bush that passed something that said that you could no longer declare bankruptcy on student loan debt. And then we saw under the Obama years that those student loan debts, the interest on that increased exponentially. So student loan interest has increased. Try to pay off it, as much as you can, but also understand that as a whole, if you have the sort of debt as like a shackle, they're going to look at that when you try to rent, when you try to buy a car, when you try to buy a mortgage. So that's why we have a record number of millennials who are permanent renters. They're not homeowners, and the mainstream news laments and wonders why, and makes up these stories saying, oh, millennials don't want to be homeowners. They don't want the responsibility. They're lazy. They just want to rent or live in their parents' basement. When the reality is that they have been shackled and manipulated by this massive debt. And I think this will go down in history as a very sad time for young people, with the amount of debt that they have been placed with at a very young age. So do what you can to pay it off, and understand that it is really not meant to be paid off in a lot of ways. I know a lot of people have buyer's remorse with their student loans and going to college at this point. So, do what you can to try to pay that off. You can go onto like the federal websites and do income-based repayments. But like I said, it is not going to forgive your loans.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. And for millennials to thrive, they need to get rid of their student loan debt. So I definitely agree with you there. So what are some good, fields of work that you think millennials should get into? And do you think what type of investments do you think are good for millennials to do?
Well, I think there's a big movement. I know, like, the mainstream news and everyone loves to glorify this idea of renting, or like doing living in a tiny house, or living in an RV or a van or something like that. A lot of that is not realistic for people. There are ways that you can live in homes without having a traditional mortgage. There's programs for first-time home buyers, that sort of stuff, but they do look at the debt to income ratio. So that's where the student loans come in. Try to pay off as much credit card debt as you can. Don't get shackled by credit card debt, etc. And think that just because you have a bunch of debt, but your credit score is high, that they're not going to look at that as part of your total debt. So there's a lot of different ways in which they look at the debt. There was an executive order signed by President Trump where they were looking more at your total monthly payment of student loans when they consider a mortgage versus the total debt. But that might have helped some people, but I think he could have done a little bit more to make it easier for people to qualify for a mortgage. Always, I would also suggest people buy gold and silver. That's what I've been doing. I've been stacking silver coins for years now, and like asking, people if they want to send me a gift, send it in silver. That's the best way, instead of something like, even for me, I'm not going to recommend this for everyone, but instead of buying something like life insurance, I'm just going to like start stacking silver. And I think that would be a better way for people to go moving forward as the prices continue to go up. Gold as well, but silver's an easier investment for people at this point, especially if you don't have a whole lot of money. Also, as far as retirement, so many people, millennials, are in the permanent gig economy. So it used to be cool and hip to have, a side hustle or something, but now people realize that that's the reality of how people are living their lives now. It's not just a hobby. It has now become a way for people to actually pay their bills. And in many of these jobs, you are 1099. So you don't have you're in a retirement that you're paying into. You don't have health insurance, that sort of thing. So even if you can put $20-$30 a week towards coins, it will stack up pretty quick.
Yeah, it's definitely a way to save your money instead of putting it in the bank where it's depreciating through inflation. So I definitely agree with you there. And I think what you're saying with getting out of debt and not being in debt, not owning, credit cards or using them too much is definitely a really good tip for millennials. Uh, yeah, and I really and I wanted to share the screen too to show everybody your channel. Would you like to tell the viewers a little bit about your channel while I'm getting it up?
Yeah, sure. So I started to make videos in 2016. I wanted to report on what I thought was going on with leading up to the presidential election, and what turned into a hobby has now sort of become a lifestyle. I like to do interviews. I'm on multiple platforms now. I'm heavily censored on YouTube, so I try not to put anything too contentious up on YouTube just because I'd like to maintain that channel. But I'm on multiple platforms. I do several interviews a week, and like to talk about anything from like geopolitics to local news. And I've gotten more into economics over the past couple years as things have gotten more and more interesting.
Yeah, well, that's really good that you're making these videos, and I definitely think people should subscribe to your channel. Is there anything else you'd like to tell millennials on how they can get better financially?
I would just say, continue to stack, buy gold and silver. I was talking to Alex earlier. Copper could be another great investment right now at this time. I think it's a great way if you have savings or cash. It's better than putting in the bank right now. You're less likely to spend it. Once you have those coins, they're good to have in an emergency, but I would say hold on to them. That's just what I think is a great way. And it's also something you can pass on to family at one point. Is just something to hold on to.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's like your own insurance, pretty much for a rainy day fund. Uh, and I really have to say, thank you for being on the show, Holly, and really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Alex.
Yeah, and I hope all the viewers have a good rest of your day. And if you could subscribe to the Morgan Report, I'll be really appreciated. Thanks again for watching. God bless.